Reimagining Success, episode 382. And in today's interview, I'm speaking with Michelle Schafer, a career coach and founder who has just hit 10 years in business. Congratulations, Michelle. So we talk as ever about redefining success. We're talking about pricing your value, building demand in a noisy market, and designing a business that genuinely fits real life. Welcome to Reimagining Success, the podcast that helps you build a profitable business as an independent expert, one that works for you and your lifestyle. I'm your host, Anna Lundberg, former corporate insider turned business mentor, executive coach, and mum of two. Whether you're a solopreneur, a coach, speaker, consultant, I'm here to guide you in creating a business that gives you freedom, flexibility, and the fulfillment you're looking for. Ready to redefine success and build a business that you love? Let's get started. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the latest interview. I'm here with Michelle Schafer, who is talking to us all the way from Ottawa in Canada. And at least while we're recording, it's very cold and snowy, which is nice to get in the mood this time of year. And Michelle, such a pleasure to have you here. And I'd love for you to introduce yourself to our audience, please.
Thank you so much, Anna. I'm so great to be here as well. And so I'm Michelle Schafer. I'm a career coach and I'm the founder of Michelle Schafer Coaching. It's interesting. I got into coaching really through career transition. I was restructured twice over the course of my career. I reinvented myself twice. And what got me into entrepreneurship was a planted seed. It was a friend of mine years and years ago who is a coach who said, I never understood why you didn't do this as a career and get into coaching. And so when I was restructured the second time, it really led me to explore. I was networking with other coaches, and I really realized that this was something that I wanted to do. So I went ahead, got 2 levels of coaching certification. I started my own practice, and that was 10 years ago. I celebrated my anniversary in July of 2025.
Congratulations.
And the rest is history.
So that's a really exciting moment. I've shared on the podcast before, I had a bit of an existential crisis when I hit 10 years a few years ago. So I'd be curious to hear how you're experiencing that. So what I'd like to ask, given, as you said, those restructurings, there's a lot of that going on at the moment. And that is sort of the standard career path of success that we see, climbing the ladder. And of course, in that mindset, through that lens, being let go can feel like failure. But as you've said now, you've taken that as an opportunity to build something that in any case sounds like a much better fit and somewhere where you're obviously able to make a difference. So I'm curious at this point then, let's say 10 years in, how are you defining success for you?
Absolutely. I mean, I really bring success down to what fulfills you in your career. And this is something that I talk to my career coaching clients about as well, my career transition clients about. But this certainly really applies to me too, which is I really believe that there's 3 keys to fulfillment. One, that you're doing work that gives you energy. You're doing less of the work that drains you, certainly doing more of the work that really fires you up. You're also doing work for, I'm going to say an organization that believes the same things that you believe in. So, for me as an entrepreneur, it's, the contracts that I take on, that the values of that organization really align with mine, the clients that I work with, that their values also align with mine. I look at that as career fulfillment key number 2. But then the third one, and this one is so key, is knowing what your non-negotiables or your deal breakers are. And I would say it's this that really spurred me to get into owning my own business, which is I really want to make sure that I had time for my family and the people in my life that I love and deem important. So, having my own business gives me that flexibility to go and watch one of my son's rugby games, for example, or when our canal is frozen, we have 8 kilometers, Anna, of frozen ice of our canal that will be freezing pretty soon. I can meet my university-age son and go for a skate with him because his campus is very close to the canal. It's things like that that are really important. But if we don't know the kind of work that fires us up and what our values are and what our deal breakers are, we tend to align ourselves with work that really isn't a good fit for us. And I really believe that that is success for me. It's not about how many, hundreds of thousands of dollars I'm going to make in the year. I mean, yes, money is a motivator. Obviously, we need to have a certain way of standard of life that we're going to maintain. But it's really about being deeply fulfilled in that work. And I think my friend who planted that seed years ago, she saw that I love to help people. People came to me when they had their own career challenges. And it was just a natural fit for me to move into that kind of work.
Mm-mm. I love how you said the non-negotiable. So one of my first ever bosses told me that, and that was, in my early 20s, I suppose, saying you can't have it all for your next role. You need to think about what's important. So the examples were some
Exactly.
of my colleagues wanted to move, let's say, home to London. We were in Switzerland at the time because their boyfriend was there or something. It's like, okay, but if that's the most important criterion, then maybe you can't choose the exact role, or you can't get promoted, or you can't do all the things. And at the time, of
Exactly.
course, being young and single, you have a certain lens, but then that those non-negotiables become very much different and very important, foundational, when you are a parent, or when you're old and you have health concerns or anything like that. It's
Absolutely.
such a useful concept.
Yeah. I mean, our priorities in our life change as we age, as we enter, other stages in life. Like I know for me, when I had kids, I mean, that was a little while ago now. Like my boys are, almost 19 and almost 17 now. My priorities in life when I was in my early 20s, they were very different. I mean, at that time, I was working for a large national financial organization. I was traveling all over Canada for work. I was living out of a suitcase. Now with kids, I don't want to do that. I want to be here for them. So it's natural that when the priorities in your own life change, that the priorities in your career change as well. And, I love seeing that with my clients, things shift and move, especially when there is a restructure. It really causes you to think of, what could you do next? And I mean, I really credit my transitions getting me into owning my own business, because I've always worked for large national organizations. I had never thought before of owning my own business. But again, ages and stages in life change and your priorities change. And that flexibility became really, really important to me.
Mm. And to what extent, when you first left, so 10 years ago, to what extent did you build out a really intentional business model for exactly what you wanted it to deliver and so on? And to what extent was it more just sort of organic? Oh, I'm going to coach and let's see what happens.
You know what? Yeah, I mentioned earlier, I've made mistakes
Mm,
before, obviously, in launching my business. I would say that would be the first mistake I made.
mm,
When I got started, yes, I had a business plan. Yes, I knew how I would market myself. I did have an idea of the kind of coaching I wanted to do. But I would say I didn't really start as I intended to continue. And what I mean by that is I remember early on, I thought, oh, I have to price myself really low
mm,
because I'm new in this business. There's many, many other people, other coaches in Ottawa who have been doing this way longer than me. Who am I to jump into this market and start charging the same thing that they are? But I realized that it was all about the value. And I think that was the big mistake that I made with my own model is I didn't really appreciate my value. And yes, I was new, but I was already bringing a value
mm,
that was based on decades already of other professional experience and other transferable skills that I was bringing to the table, that I was bringing to my clients. And even some of the, I call it small C coaching work I was doing over my career before. I
mm,
say small C because I hadn't gone to a coaching school. I didn't have a model behind me. I was already doing that work and
mm,
I wasn't really integrating that even into my own marketing, even into my own promotion. So I started off. Actually, I'm trained as a life coach, and I decided that I wanted to really channel my coaching in the career space because I've been restructured twice. I really wanted to be able to help people, find that roadmap to find new work. But what I wasn't recognizing was I could do more than that. And what I didn't realize until probably 2 years after I started my business is I was quite skilled on leadership coaching. I could work with leaders at different levels of the organization and help them, form better relationships with their team members, have difficult conversations, delegate, all of those kind of things. So I started off on one path, but I hadn't really done the solid thinking to think, okay,
mm,
well, what's this really going to look like? What are the different topics I can coach on? I just kind of started
mm,
and things evolved from there. So, to your point, yes, it was a bit more organic, but I recognize now the power of like working with somebody like a business consultant, even to say, okay, what are all the things that are really relevant in my business? How am I going to bring that out into my marketing to attract new clients? What are the kind of things I really want to help people on? I could have done a take two on that if I were to start all over again.
I think there's so many things going on there, aren't there? So coming out of a lot of coaching schools, which are amazing, are just do us a disservice, I think, by not helping coaches understand how to position themselves and how to actually run a business. And I don't know about you, but my coaching trade was very much the pure coaching. And like you said, we all come and we know that coaching can help anyone do anything, but that's not a super helpful positioning when you're talking about messaging and marketing and sales strategy. So I think that already makes it hard. Then we're all really lovely people who are really excited about this thing that can help. So we think, oh, I want to do it for free and I want to help as many people as possible. And then, as you said, unfortunately, we forget that we've got decades of professional experience. We think we're starting out and who am I to charge more and so on. So we make decisions from that place of lack without realizing, no, but I'm very much a senior professional with a lot of value that I can bring here. And of course, the more specific we can be with that value, whether it's leadership or career, whatever you go for, the more you can charge as well.
Well, and it's interesting because I even saw that play out on LinkedIn. So, I mean, and right now, I would say I probably post about 5 out of every 7 days of the week on LinkedIn. I talk about, obviously looking for work, career transition topics that will be relevant for my clients. But when I started out, I hid behind the words of everybody else. So I would be on LinkedIn, I would follow people, I would like posts, but I never would comment and I would never post my own, my own thoughts at all. And, I think it really comes back to, who am I? I'm in this very busy, very competitive marketplace of very experienced coaches. What on earth do I have to talk about? And I convinced myself that I really didn't think that I had a lot to talk about. And I think the biggest shift for me that really prompted me in a completely new direction that way was the pandemic. And all of a sudden in COVID, people were losing their jobs. There was something, and I don't know if you heard of the Great Resignation, which was when en masse, people were leaving jobs. They were moving on to new opportunities. They had all this reflection time when they were sitting at home. We couldn't see other people. We were really holed up and quite isolated. People started thinking about their jobs and what was meaningful for them. And, it was just really interesting to see that with those shifts, all of a sudden I had a lot to talk about. I was seeing what was happening in the marketplace. I had my own perspectives that I could share. I had tips and strategies that would help people when they were looking for work. All of a sudden I started writing on LinkedIn, and then I started writing more and I started writing more. And I just realized that I had convinced myself all those years before that I had really nothing of value to say. And I realized very quick, I have all this value to share. And I've been building on that over time. And that certainly it's culminated in me writing a book, certainly this year, which I never would have thought that was something I would do as well. So, I think for all your listeners, it's, really take stock of, what you have to offer and own that and be proud of that and share that with others. Because, when you believe it, others will believe it as well. And it really becomes part of who you are and what's important to you. That's your brand. And I'm always amazed when people start working with me and they say, I've been following you on LinkedIn or I've read your book and you're exactly like you are online, or you're exactly how you sound in the book. And I think that too is a definition of success when you're not somebody you're not. You're not trying to be something else or someone else. That the real you, the authentic you, however you show up, that comes through in everything you do. Your interactions with clients, your networking conversations, your online presence, all of that needs to be aligned. And it's taken me years to do that. You don't build a brand overnight. Obviously, we both know that. But, just really focusing on those intentional steps, I think, can get you there.
It's such an important and reassuring message. I think it's so easy, especially with everything now with AI having exploded even more content. But you see what other people are putting out there, and perhaps less so now because you think, oh, actually, it's not that great. Some of the stuff that's coming out, but generally, compared to
Yeah.
even when I started too, and around the same time as you 10 years ago, there wasn't that much. LinkedIn, there were so few of us actually that you could just put up a post and get clients. Whereas it's a very different world now. One of the shifts that worked for
Yes.
me was somebody said, don't try to be the authority on this topic, rather
Yeah.
contribute to the discussion. And I love what you said about we
Exactly.
all observing trends that are happening. This is what I see with my clients, and just showing up as yourself. It's so performative sometimes with social media that we get told by the gurus, this is how you have to post, this type of carousel and this type of infographic, and you've got
Oh
to write with
gosh.
this many words on each line. And we're all trying to fit that template. And of course, all we're doing is diluting our message. So I love that sort of permission, as if
Exactly.
we need it, to just, as you said, also commenting, of course, is very effective, but just bringing, this is what I've
Yes.
seen and this is what I experience. And I think that vulnerability, honesty, authenticity is what people connect with. So that's such an important thing to
Absolutely.
remember when you're building. You think you're building a personal brand and it has to be all professional and perfect, but actually the opposite is true.
Exactly. Yeah, it's just, it's bringing your own thoughts and perspectives to the table. I mean, really interesting, and this is a true story. I have received clients from comments on other people's posts that were thoughtful, that contributed to the conversation, maybe even was a bit of devil's advocate thinking where you brought something else into the space that other people hadn't thought of. And, I always ask people, well, how did you know about me? How did you find out about me? And I have had people come and say, I saw your comments on this person's post and I follow them and I really liked what you said. And so I really wanted to explore more with you. And so, yeah, it is about just showing up, about who you are. And yeah, there's a lot of noise, on the platform, on LinkedIn. I was just saying society in general about authenticity and leadership, human leadership. Like, what does that mean? And, I think it just really comes down to whatever's important to you, that comes through in your conversations and in your writing all the time, like consistently, not just once, not just twice, but in all of your interactions. And that's how you build a business. You build a business. Like people buy from people that they trust. They don't buy necessarily from a post, although that might spark their interest. They want to explore more. It really comes down to the person. What are you standing for? And are you standing for the things that I stand for? The clients that I work with, they know I like to give homework to them. Like, I mean, there's activities, there's things to do. So if they're thinking that I'm just going to tell them everything that they want to hear and I'm going to tell them what to do with their career, no, that's not how coaching works. And so, I want to attract those kind of clients that, that believe the same things that I believe in, that reflection. And yes, some hard work is how you get places. It's not by having everything handed to you. And, I think of how I built a business. Nobody handed anything to me. I started my business with 0 clients, like literally not one out of the starting gate, not one anchor client. I had a lot of coffee. I remember in that first year, I had a lot of lunches and a lot of breakfasts. And, it's just about reconnecting with people that you're already connected with to talk about what you're doing. It's not about sales. It's just, hey, like, are you interested in knowing what I'm up to these days? Oh, well, if you know anybody who's looking for a new job, I'd be happy to help them. Like very organic conversations that lead to sales. And I think that's the beauty of having your own business, is just being able to see that grow and know that you've done it. Nobody handed you a business with, a portfolio of clients. You had to work hard to get to that. And, 10 years later, I'm very proud of that. And especially as a single parent, I mean, I've been, have 2 kids and a business and a home, and there's a lot going on with all 3 of them.
And it's interesting you talk about the commenting, and as we were just talking before we recorded, it started recording, I was sharing how really going on other people's podcasts is actually more effective probably in terms of getting new clients and becoming more known, just like commenting. And so people who are a bit tentative maybe about posting their own things, actually, commenting, as you said, as long as you have a point of view. Sadly, now I get some sort of bots and people who are clearly just kind of copy pasting things, which is not a good use of your time, just public service announcement there.
Exactly. Exactly.
But also having the point of view and having the confidence. I think when you begin to see, oh, I actually disagree with that, or oh, that's interesting, I would add this. That's where things become, that's where clearly people, as you said, are being drawn to you because, oh yeah, I really like what she stands for, the mission, and I agree with her that that's not true and so on. I'm curious then, so in terms of, and I love what you said about relationships too. So I'm seeing this too, coming from a marketing background, even I have to acknowledge and observe that relationships now are more important than ever. And certainly in terms of building those first clients, but also ongoing, it's really your warmest network that's going to get you immediate results, whereas the long-term personal branding piece is much more sort of the long game. So how do you build demand for your business? So where are people coming? You mentioned LinkedIn, of course. You're obviously guesting on podcasts. You have your relationships. So how are you making sure you have the clients that you want in a day-to-day business?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I would say the biggest foundation in terms of how people find me is through my network. It's through past clients. It's, family members of past clients. I mean, it's always fascinating to me that somebody that I worked with, like 5 years ago remembers the value of the work that we had and then recommends me to somebody else, so the power of those referrals, I mean, there's just absolutely no price tag on that at all. Certainly the other channels where people are finding me, you mentioned, of course, podcasts. Because I've written a book, people are finding me as well, like just through my writing. They're reading my book and then they're saying, oh, I'd really like to work with you one-on-one. LinkedIn is a big channel for me. And it's not even necessarily that somebody will come and say like, oh, there's something about what you wrote this day that caused me to work with you. It's showing up consistently. And that's oftentimes what people will notice is I've been following you and you tell stories about your clients and you share strategies that will be helpful to job seekers. So being on social media, and I'm really mainly on LinkedIn, I mean, that is helping. And what I'm finding, I think because of my book, because of LinkedIn, because of, podcast guesting, I have a heightened online presence. And so what's happening now, this amazes me. People will find me now through ChatGPT.
Amazing.
And which is incredible. And so Chat is, doing some work behind the scenes to help me too. And somebody I remember said, oh, I saw your name in a Reddit thread. I thought, I'm not even on Reddit. So the fact that somebody found me in that way is always amazing. So I mean, that all helps as well. One of the things too that I've been doing to really reach more people is because obviously I'm one person. So, I mean, I can't meet everybody one-on-one, I mean, that would be a phenomenal number of people. So one of the things that I've been doing is just scaling to offering online courses. So I've offered one. I've actually taken it offline because I'm making some tweaks, but in 2026, I'm going to be offering more where it's a combination of, online video. You can do it at your own pace. You get a free copy of my book and there's time with me. So that too is just helping to grow my reach and build my business. I've really recognized over the years that what I love doing is helping people find new work. So whether they're out of love with what they're doing or whether they've lost their job, it's really focusing in on that lane. And I think that's probably been the biggest shift that has helped me grow my business is that I picked a lane. So I do a lot less leadership coaching now. And I really focus on career transition. And so what that's done in terms of my reach is it's establishing me as an expert in that field. I was wearing two hats before and I recognize now like that can be confusing for people. So really scaling it back can actually grow the reach and help people find you more effectively because you're really concentrating in one area.
Yeah, that's music to my ears, but it's always such a resistance, isn't it? Because as you said, you can do the leadership stuff and you can be pretty good at it. So it's just, again, reassuring for people to hear another evidence point that actually going deeper, especially with AEO and the LLM model tools now. So I don't know if you're aware, but because you're appearing in Reddit, that's also why you're appearing on ChatGPT, because ChatGPT uses Reddit. So, it's all, but to do that, you have to have a really specific thing you're known for. If you're just kind of does this coaching and that coaching and you're appearing all over the place with different things, it won't know what to do with you. So unfortunately, for those of us who are generalists and multi-passionates and Renaissance men and women, it becomes a bit harder. We have to work a little bit harder, as you say, on sort of leaning in, at least temporarily, to a particular area. Maybe that book and that offer can be around that. Of course, it doesn't mean you have to stick with that for the rest of your life, but it's great to hear a real life example of someone who's gone deeper and felt that actually opened up more opportunities rather than narrowing things down.
Well, and it was interesting. I think it was through widening the gate for me, allowed me to narrow it, because it was really clear for me what I really love doing and what I love talking about. I think that was the biggest clue for me, was what do I gravitate to talk about on LinkedIn? And I found it was harder for me to write leadership posts and super easy for me to write career transition ones. And my book doesn't have any AI generated content at all. I mean, this is like purely my client stories out of my head, using my systems, all of that. So I feel very proud about that, especially in this age of AI, that AI did not help my book at all. And I feel good about that. But, it was the widening. So starting in career transition, adding leadership coaching. So that kind of widened the field. I also, for a while, was doing group coaching. So I was doing one-on-one and group coaching, and I was doing workshops on both topics, career transition and leadership. So my message at one time, yes, I was doing a lot. I was busy. Yeah, I was making good money from all of those different things I was doing. But it became really clear for me that there were certain things that I was starting to lack energy for. And the group programs I was lacking energy for. I love the transformational power of a one-on-one conversation, like what we're doing right now. I mean, I really enjoy that. So then I parted ways with the group coaching. I also really picked a lane, and that came from my podcast guesting. I was part of an accelerator, and the leader said, your message is diluted. You're trying to say too much. He said, you really need to focus on one area. And it was easy for me to decide. Yeah, career transition is really, it's what I love. It's where my experience is, my personal experience. I've got personal expertise to bring to the table with that. So, by narrowing, I had to widen in order to narrow. And I think the learnings are in the widening. Yes, I was doing some interesting, exciting things, but I realized over the years that, you know what, I'm going to come back to my roots. I'm going to come back to transition and those one-on-one conversations. That's really where the magic is for me.
And it's so common, as we said, we start organically, not being so intentional. And then you say yes to this opportunity and you craft that offer there. And before you know, you've got one-on-one and coaching and group and online and offline and leadership and companies and B2C, B2B. And it's become this kind of Frankenstein of different offers. So I like what you said about first going broader, because you have to know what you don't know. So it's very hard to sit behind a screen and decide this is going to be my perfect blueprint. But years in, once you have that lived experience of what you enjoy talking about, working with, and you've got the testimony, you can say, oh no, really, this is where I can add the most value. And that's such an exciting moment, because it really opens up for that next level of business results and also fulfillment for you. I'd love to anchor the conversation really in the practical day-to-day, I suppose. Given that model, as you said, you have simplified now. I know we talked about getting an assistant. So being a solopreneur doesn't mean we have to do everything ourselves. So tell me, what does your structure look like? How many days and hours do you work? What does life look like, I suppose, for you on a day-to-day?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, it's interesting, because I think the beauty of being an entrepreneur is those days can be flexible depending on what it is that you need to do over the course of a day. So for me, as part of my personal business model for me is I always start the day with two things: movement and meditation. So before we hopped on this podcast, Anna, I went for a run this morning. It was minus 16 degrees Celsius.
Well done. That's very impressive.
It was cold and there's ice on the road, but I really believe in starting the day that way. And then just even a 10-minute meditation, like just to kind of ground yourself, I find just just centers me for the day. For me, I don't take any client meetings until 10:30. That
Nice.
doesn't mean I'm sitting around in my pajamas drinking coffee. No. So after I have my run, after I do the meditation, obviously that's when I take my creative time. And so I am more creative in the morning. So before I have a client meeting, that's my time to be on LinkedIn, to comment, to post, to do any of those things, to handle some correspondence. It's also my chance to do some creative things with my clients. So, if somebody needs some input on a resume or, to, put together some interview questions because we're going to be doing a practice interview like that's what I'll use my morning for. Also to do some outreach. So LinkedIn is a big part of that, but obviously direct outreach to individuals, I'll try to do in the morning as well. Set up some calls, set up some meetings. Then the way I've set my schedule, I use Calendly. People just book for the time and date that they want. And so what I'll do is I'll set aside time for 5 meetings. So I'll do 3 one-hour client meetings and 2 half-an-hour consults. So if somebody's interested in working with me, we'll do like a discovery call and I'll learn a little bit about them and what it is that they're looking for, how I can help. I don't make those meetings back to back though. So I aim to finish all my meetings by 4:30 at the latest, a little bit before if I can. I always build in time in between my meetings so then I can do my follow-up with the client. I give them like their homework and activity or reading, something that they can look at and something they can do before the next session. And then I take another walk at the end of the day and I will build in like walks around the block in between my meetings too. So I try to just not be behind the screen all day. I actually do all of my coaching online. There's the odd client that likes to meet in person. And then I will take some time in the evening because I will take time between about 4:30 and maybe 7:30 where I'm not doing work. So I'm making dinner, I'm going for a walk, I'm checking in with, my one son who's still at home, my other one's at university, but checking in with him as well. And sometimes it's driving the younger son places or whatever it is. Maybe I'll go for an exercise class and then I'll tend to do work for a few more hours in the evening. So yeah, I do some work in the evening, but I also make time for the things that are really important to me. And for me, that's making time for family, having a dinner that doesn't result in everybody eating on their own, like actually having time with no phones and no screens at the table and really just focusing in on each other and more movement. More movement is very important for me during the day. It also helps me think. I'll come up with LinkedIn posts when I'm out for a run or something like that. So it's making time for what's important to me. And if like let's say that, my son has a game, he was playing rugby in the fall, I would be able to block off time for meetings. I would go on the field and yeah, maybe I'd do some things in between games, but I was on the field and present for him. And that's really important for me to be able to do that. So if it means I do a little bit of work at night, I'm fitting in other things during the day that are important to me and I'm okay with that.
And what about over the year? Do you take the summer off? The sort of how long are you taking off now for the holidays?
Yes, for sure. So I take a 2-week block over the holidays. I take a 2-week block in the summer, and that's not checking emails and that. In the summer, we always do as a family, like a cottage vacation. So I do nothing on LinkedIn. I don't even check. Like I've actually turned off all my notifications. I turned that off years ago. I actually don't have those things go off. I intentionally will go in and look. And so, yeah, taking that time is really important. I would say even just for like on a weekly basis, I also take Fridays. I will have one client meeting in the morning and then that's it. So then the rest of the day is for me. So if I want to go for a hike, I also do something, Anna, you're going to think this is crazy. I do cold water dips.
We're big on cold water dips down here as well. So I'm with you on that one.
You
Although
do?
the snowy Canadian dips, I feel like are another level. So I'm not sure if I can claim to be as daring, but yeah, they're very popular down here as well.
Oh, yes. Yeah. 3 minutes in. So, just being able to take time for that. So my Fridays, and actually in 2026, I'm going to block Friday off completely. I won't have any client meetings meetings on that day. So that'll be my day I can do some catch up. I can get out and do something for myself. I find that's really important to end the week that way and then plan for the next week, which is really key. So
I love that. It's so simple and so reasonable. And yet I think for a lot of people, it will sound really radical. So it's really great to hear, I'm hearing is values aligned work in line with your natural cycles and rhythms, fitting with the need for movement, your health, your family. It's just really nice to see that play out. And I'm sure that sort of evolved over the years. I don't want to let you go without hearing about your book. So what's your book and how can we find that one?
So it's called Cultivating Career Growth, Navigating Transitions with Purpose. It is available on Amazon. There's also an ebook version too for anybody with a Kindle. And it's part workbook, it's part strategy. So it's a chance to kind of do some reflection and write along the way. Even for anybody who's thinking about, launching a business and maybe they're not sure, sure if it's for them. My book can be really helpful, especially to do that groundwork reflection. And you can also get a free chapter. I will give you the information for show notes. You can get a free chapter of my book and you can find it on my website, mschafercoaching.ca.
Perfect. And is that the best place to connect with you? And it sounds like LinkedIn as well. I'll make sure we put that in the show notes to be able to see.
Absolutely. LinkedIn is a great way to connect. There. Yeah, especially because I do write a lot on LinkedIn. Sometimes it's even just seeing a post that maybe sparks some thought or a bit of inspiration that can give you, just something new to think about.
And given, again, we're at this sort of 10-year milestone, but also the cusp of the new year, not exactly sure when this episode is going out, but what are you thinking for the next phase of your business? Anything new and exciting? Is it about simplifying even more or doing bigger things? What does that look like?
It is partly about simplifying and partly about some new offerings. So, with simplifying, I mentioned I've been working with a VA specifically for podcast guesting. I'm going to be looking to also do more things with a virtual assistant that will certainly just take the load off of my business even more. I mean, I'm already working with a website professional, a bookkeeper as well. Certainly helps to have some other tasks in the business that are automated and simplified. The new offerings are going to be really in a suite of new online courses. So, there's one that I call the Job Search Jumpstart, which is kind of everything you need to know if you've just lost your job or, you're thinking about doing something new. This is a good course to take. But then I'm also going to do some really focused ones, one on networking and one on interviewing for sure. Those are the two biggest areas that I see people struggle with when they are looking to explore something new. And certainly on the networking side, I mean, what I found is it has less to do with looking for a new job, and it is just a life skill that supports you and serves you, especially as a business owner. You can't survive without networking and reaching out and attending events and all of those kind of things. So just giving people some new language, debriefing some limiting beliefs that can get in people's way. So really looking forward to launching that in 2026.
Yeah, super exciting and much needed. And again, the need for that kind of relationship building, it feels strange to say that that's a trend, given that it's really just human interactions, but it is a bit of a counter movement to all the automation and online and so on.
Yes.
It's so important to have those human connections. And as you say, the networking word gives people the shivers, but really there are some techniques I'm sure that you can share and just reframing that as building relationships with a fellow human being. I think
it is. It's about having conversations. We have conversations all the time, like more than we probably give ourselves credit for. So when we bring those conversation skills to, meeting somebody new to explore a new opportunity, I mean, that's the direct target. But the conversation skills, we already do that every day. Like, let's say you have a new neighbor and you introduce yourself, or if you have kids, meeting parents at your kids' school or in their activities, we do that. And we oftentimes don't give ourselves credit for the fact that we know how to be in conversation, but giving a structure, especially as it relates to a job search or seeking out new clients, can be very, very helpful for sure.
Absolutely. Well, Michelle, thank you so much for sharing your story with such openness and honesty. Congratulations on the 10-year milestone. That's very exciting.
Thank you.
Look forward to seeing what comes next. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening to today's episode. If you are building a business that's already up and running, but you can feel it needs a bit of tightening, so it's easier to sell, easier to deliver, and actually fits your life, then that's the work I do. You can book a call at onestepoutside.com/call if you want to have a chat and talk through your particular goals and challenges. And of course, if you found this episode helpful, then do hit follow so you don't miss next week's episode. So again, that link to book a call is onestepoutside.com/call.